Happy Halloween and welcome to another episode of Tu Tia Bruja. I'm Bex Carlos, your designated Tia Bruja, and I am so stoked. Not only is this Halloween, right, but it's also our 100th episode. It's funny because I always say we, but I mean the podcast and I, because it's just me creating. That's why I'm especially grateful, one, that we've made it this far, and two, for all of your support. I think later on in the show, I'm going to tell you some scary stories. But until then, we are going to take this as an opportunity to do one of the most terrifying things that we never do, right? Be vulnerable. No, just kidding. I'm vulnerable a lot on this show, and I'm really grateful for you, all of you, for resonating and telling me that when I do that, I've helped you in some way. So awesome. But I think I have a praise kink, and I say that jokingly, but also kind of seriously, because I think when we have parents that want us to work hard and do things really well, they don't always commend us or tell us they're proud of us, or just that we did good work, right? And I've been very blessed to do a lot of finger quote good work, and it's led to this, it's led to all of this, and I'm just really grateful. So I want to take the opportunity to read some of these reviews that people have created, because quite frankly, I don't know if you know this, if you really value someone's content, and a lot of folks definitely help out on Patreon, and I'm so grateful for you. You guys definitely make sure everything's funded and that I never have to worry about where hosting fees are going to come from or anything like that. So thank you for that. And if you can't financially support, which a lot of us can't, because of how our money situation is, the best thing you can do is share with a friend, share with your group of people that you really think would take something from it, or write a review. Let's start off with these reviews, shall we? All right, we start with Yo Franny. I have an idea who that is. Shout out to you. Thank you again. So good. Bex is just the best, so warm, so wise, so authentic, and she's teaching us all so much. Thank you for your show. Thank you. We have Cass949494. Thought-provoking and essential. This podcast showcases everything that I love: spirituality, spookiness, and giving a platform to other people of color. Bex does an amazing job of creating conversation around heavy subjects while keeping it entertaining and easy to understand. Thank you so much for all of the important work that you put into this. It doesn't go unrecognized. Oh, I love you. And I want to take this moment to also, the word spooky is a slur for Black people. It is an anti-Black sentiment. It wasn't always that way, right? But it became that way. And I think that the most important thing that we can all do is learn how to be better allies. And so I would recommend trying to use creepy or scary, or, if you have a wider vocabulary, there's a multitude of words out there you can use. So by all means, definitely find another one that would be better. Thank you again for the review, and thank you for the learning opportunity for all of us. East Los Roots, great show. I really enjoy this podcast. Just started listening and the show resonates. Thank you so much. Rightfully so. Enlightening. This podcast is culturally relevant and informative. It sheds light on customs and rituals that very few people discuss, but many people engage in. The mere discussions illuminate the importance of acceptance and awareness. Thank you so much. Amazing Pod by Mel Pod. From the intro music to the last minute, I love the authenticity and enjoy the various topics that are covered, both fun and educational. Sahara Siren, relatable and informative. As a newbie in the spiritual world, this podcast has introduced me to new topics and ideas that make me so excited to learn more. Thank you so much. Terry Kozlowski. Bex is passionate. Yes, our intentions and purpose is how we are to move forward with our lives. 100%. Thank you for listening. Widget0712, amazing pod. Instantly fell in love with this podcast. The life experiences spoken about on this podcast are exactly what I needed to hear right now on my journey. This podcast is rich with personal experiences that are relatable. I cannot rave about it enough. Thank you so much. And I love that it was like divine timing speaking to you through someone else. I've been having a lot of those moments myself, and I know how powerful they can be. So I'm glad that the show was there for you. Tina Marie Trimpert, hope I pronounced that correctly. Yas Witches. Thank you so much. Instantly subscribed, my fellow witchy friends. I didn't know that much about Brujeria, so this was very interesting, and I'm definitely binge listening. Keep spreading the word that witches are not all evil. Thank you for listening. And I want to take this opportunity to say that I, by no means, am a traditional brujeria practitioner. I definitely say that my particular brand of brujeria is Chicano influenced, and I think that that's the cool thing about a lot of our traditions, right? It's the continued survival. It's like a bastardized form of a lot of things, right? It's also the influence of a lot of our indigenous nations. African practices, a lot of Jewish practices, a lot of different things. It was the ability to survive and practice what you were practicing in plain sight, right? Hidden, but in plain sight, obviously. And I want to take this opportunity to say that if there's anybody out here saying that brujeria doesn't come from Catholicism or wasn't influenced by Catholicism, or, because obviously things change and people can have their own brand of whatever, that person is lying to you. I know that in a few episodes back, we talked about the fact that like people have this ability and need to romanticize people, right? And I think that unfortunately, like I've been guilty of this too, that I don't know, like it helps us feel better when we can just make our indigenous ancestors, like these heroes, these martyrs. And yes, indigenous people were slaughtered and there's a lot of fucked up shit that colonialism did. But we also have to remember that like our indigenous ancestors also had their own methods of dealing and practicing and just being that maybe weren't the best. I recently learned that my grandfather would have this terrible habit of, if he was trying to punish one of his sons, he would basically tie them up, hoist them up, right? And essentially just like beat the shit out of him, get his licks in, which I've heard come from like different indigenous traditions, because that was a way of punishing wrongdoers within the group and deciding whether or not they should come back. This is to say, and I could be wrong on this, if there's someone who's a historian out there who would like to prove me wrong, by all means, please do. We have the terrible habits of just believing that all indigenous people were very passive, and we have to understand that indigenous people are not a monolith. They were all different types. And that being said, that's not that any of them should have been slaughtered, because obviously they shouldn't have. But I don't think that we should think of them as these people who did no wrong. I'm gonna make this thought, and then a buddy of mine, just to end our words of praise segment, I have someone who recorded a bit, so I'll play that. But just my last thought is, I think that we need to honor our ancestors, and we need to learn about them to also undo a lot of the generational curses that we have, right? And I want to bring this up. I was in a genealogy group that I had to leave, honestly, but I had posted that a lot of us, as we start digging into the genealogy, we start to learn family secrets and generational curses, and we learned about just like a lot of toxic things that we have within us. I had just said that, these curses can end with us, like they don't have to continue on. And it was deemed irrelevant of the group, even though so many people were like sharing and getting things off of their chest and using this space to like share and kind of let some of that off their chest. It was taken down for not being relevant. And it just really broke my heart, because I had said that my mother is one of 12, and obviously my grandparents were not emotionally intelligent enough to take care of all of them. I also just think that 12 children is a whole lot. And I see a lot of those generational curses like play out with all of my uncles and aunts, and let alone myself. It's just sort of like educate ourselves, right? And it really just broke my heart that like, a lot of us are going to find ugly shit. I hate to tell you, colonialism is not pretty, and this isn't to say that there aren't other groups that also deal with fucked up shit, but specifically in this Mexican genealogy group, we're going to find some stuff. And I had to leave, and I created a TikTok about it just to warn people. And this is my warning to you. Like, if you're going to do genealogy stuff, like nobody's really going to care about your feelings, because it's a lot of old heads who think that we should bottle that shit up, and then we'll drink a whole lot or find other unhealthy coping mechanisms, which I can't talk. I smoke a lot of weed. But that being said, just be wary, because if you are trying to find a space to be vulnerable, that is not the space. All right. I want to take the second to play this clip from my friend Luis. Here we go.
I came across Tu Tia Bruja at a time when I was looking to connect with the magic of my culture and other practitioners from Latin backgrounds. Little did I know that the show would connect me with some of the best people I have the honor of knowing, most of all Bex herself. She works so hard in this wonderful little gem of a podcast, and I love her for it. If you're looking for a show to listen to, this is definitely one of them.
Shout out to Luis, and shout out to all the other people that I've become friends with throughout the course of me creating the show. It's both lovely and a little heartbreaking to me that sometimes the people who enjoy and get the most out of my content are folks that are strangers who found me on the internet than a lot of people in my life. And I think that that's because I don't know, a whirlwind of reasons, I think. Maybe they just don't want to be vulnerable or share that they are vulnerable at times with other people because sometimes that can look like weakness. I think people who have known me my whole life don't want to think that I am capable of healing. And I think sometimes people like having a certain power over you that they felt at one time or another. I also think that some people just can't make the time for others. That's okay. I think that I'm just kind of learning I don't need to be angry. I just need to move on. I recommend that same advice to you. If there are people in your life who just can't support you, start to create those boundaries. And in that note, I'm going to start a segment called Things We Should Have Known. And I say that jokingly, but I also think I will start it as a segment because I think there are a lot of things we should have known or been aware of. How often are you cleansing? I think that cleansing is like one of the easiest things that you can do. You can get like a little spray bottle and get some agua de florida. You can get like one of those roller things. You could put some in there. You could make your own cleansing spray. We need to remember that that is something that is super easy to do that can be super changing. I do a lot of tarot readings, but in public settings, like for groups and stuff, which can be a little exhausting at times. I enjoy it though. It's one of those things that you gotta like mentally prep before and then like have time to decompress. It's almost like a hangover afterwards when you're reading for that many people. I had a gig recently and it was amazing. These people really dressed up their house to the nines and they decorated every room of their house. And I was just like, look at y'all. Like, I need to make more friends who go this like far out for Halloween. I got to read and I always love reading with Marcella Kroll's The Dreamers deck, but I always just love when one of the first people that I read for is really, I don't want to say like surprised, but kind of like, let's say shook by what the cards read them for. And I had an event where that happened, and I probably read for like somewhere between like 20 to 30 people. I don't even know. And the people were lovely. They were like, take breaks, eat. Like, if you need to step away, definitely do. It was a lot of fun, but it did get to be very mentally exhausting. And I did cleanse before and I did cleanse after, but I really wish I would have had a cleansing spray with me. And we had some incense going to cleanse the space, but I don't know. Like, it's almost just like, what could I have done? I veiled, I wore a hat, I was drinking, which I don't regret because I feel like sometimes spirits make spirits come out a little easier. I was hydrating like between drinks, so I did everything I could to prepare, but I could have prepared more, I guess. So this is my reminder to you. If you are not cleansing before you go out in the world, please do. And if you are doing things that are a little bit more spiritually or emotionally draining, be sure and cleanse a whole lot after that. Now, let's tell some ghost stories. Okay, let's tell some ghost stories. I have one that was submitted, and then I also want to share my own. So, okay, I feel like on this show, I've shared a lot of different things spiritually that have happened to me, but I am really excited. I just got a spirit box. Shout out to Ghost Stop, which Matt's Glee told me about, especially if paranormal or ghost hunting is something you want to do. I just got a spirit box and I'm really excited about it. Typically, and I think this is just how spirit presents to me, I think it's more auditory as opposed to visual, right? So I want to talk about the time where I was hanging out by myself at my home. And it's interesting because I don't think my house is necessarily haunted by a spirit, but I think my house is haunted by a memory, like of the people who used to live here. I think something traumatic happened here and therefore the energy is stuck here. And if you listen to my episode before this, I talk about like how I think there was that spirit of the little boy, and I think that that's sort of tied to something. I don't know. I haven't put it all together yet. Now that I'm an adult and I can see it a little differently, it's a little easier to decipher. So we'll see if I can get down to the bottom of it. That being said, there was this time when I was in my teens and I was very rebellious, and that's the best time for activity. I mean, like poltergeists and whatnot, obviously. But even beyond that, I think that like teens have a lot of that childlike innocence at times that they're not always ready to let go. And so they are still more likely to be susceptible. So I was hanging out by myself and the stereo was downstairs. One of the speakers was upstairs. And I was chilling watching TV, and then all of a sudden I remember like hearing something very quietly, like music was playing. I was like, well, that was weird. But then it was almost like because I was just like, all right, well, I don't hear it. It's too loud, you're too old kind of thing. So all of a sudden, this song just starts blasting through the speakers. Hotel California just comes on, which is very interesting. I think that song is about being trapped in hell, so I'm not going to think about the symbolism there a whole lot. But that did creep me out enough where I had to leave my house. I was probably like 14, 15 when that happened. So that was one that I'd like to share with you. That being said, that's also why I'm investing in a voice box, because spirit speaking to me tends to happen through music of some sort or audio or something I can hear. So I'm interested to see what I pick up. So my friend Cass shared a story as well. So I'm going to play that.
Having a sleepover with one of my friends, and I don't really remember why we decided to take residence in my little brother's room, but we decided to camp out there. And since he was younger than us, he had like that plastic covering underneath his bed sheets just in case, he had a little accident. So we were just sitting there like having the time of our lives, and all of a sudden we hear the plastic ruffling at the bottom of the bed. So of course we looked at each other blankly, like, did you just see that? And we kind of just like stared at each other and understanding that, yeah, we did just fucking see that and we did just hear that. And in that split second, because it's always a split second with these things, right? All of a sudden, the ruffling just starts coming up the bed. Like, we see it and we hear it coming closer, and we're just pulling up our legs as close to our chests, and we're pretty much in fetal position at this point, just screaming for my mom. And all this is going on, and all of a sudden, like, after it stopped, we heard and we saw the door crack open and a child laugh. So that was definitely the scariest experience I've ever had. I was probably 13ish, maybe a little bit older, and it still sits with me. And I'm like, yeah, I hope that never happens again. Since it was physical rather than, just hearing things, it was harder to just put it away as, oh, we could explain that. No. And I experienced it with someone else, so I knew I wasn't crazy, so that was good. But yeah, that's my scary story.
All right, that's the show. Thank you to everyone who sent in audio. Shout out to Luis and Cass. Shout out to all the people who have written a review. Please remember, if you have gotten anything out of the 100 episodes of this show, please, by all means, share that particular episode. Just tell your friends about the episode. I don't know, like, if you could please just share, I'd really appreciate it. It makes me smile. It makes me happy that people are getting stuff out of this show. So thank you again. Here's to another 100. Thank you for listening. Y'all are the best. Have a happy Halloween. Don't eat too much candy. Be smart, be safe, and take care of yourself. Bye.
Yeah.